Hey everybody, Jason and Brian here, and we're going to talk to you today about Powerheads, and specifically some of the mistakes we make when putting Powerheads in our aquarium. You know, Powerheads are one of the most crucial pieces of equipment that we use, especially in reefing. They help provide flow for our corals and our fish. They help keep the tank clean, but it's really easy to mess it up. So we're going to talk to you about some of these mistakes now, starting with our first one.
Yep, let's get right into it. Mistake number one, improper placement. Do you have a rectangular tank, a nano tank, a large tank, a cube tank? There's a ton of options. You also need to think about your aquascape, your rock work.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the tank size and shape especially is going to play big time into where this pump goes in the tank. So a lot of it's just trial and error. Move that pump around, see how the aquarium reacts to it. If it doesn't look good, move it. Try again. Keep going until you find the right spot. It's not always super easy, but do make sure that you put the pump someplace where you can easily get to it to take it out, clean, provide maintenance when it's needed. All right, so our second mistake is picking the wrong pump. There's so many different options out there to choose from. How do you know which pump is going to suit you best?
Exactly. So we just talked about rectangular tanks, cube tanks, right? So we talked about different shapes of tanks. Something like this Tunzi pump has really directional flow. Might not be a good option for a cube tank, but a rectangular tank where you need to move flow across a larger area, a great option for. Your gyre pumps are a really good option for both, right? Because you can not only change the direction of the flow, you can change the direction of these eductors here. Vortex pumps are a really good option for both, right? They move a lot of water and they move it in a wide pattern. They also have a pulling feature against the glass similar to like an undertow. Yeah. So these are great for cube tanks.
Yeah, and I do find that the gyre style pumps are a lot better for even for smaller tanks. Than something like the Tunzi or some of these really directional pumps. It's going to provide a more, like a wider band of flow, really get all those nooks and crannies.
If we're talking on aquascape, right? Aquascaping, if you have, a lot of people say don't do this, right? The big rock wall in the back of the tank, but we see it all the time. Gyres are a really great option. Put it on the back of your side glass and have it shoot behind there. Problem solved.
Yep. And that brings us to our next mistake, which is not taking flow into account when doing your aquascaping.
Exactly, so we just talked about this, right? The rock wall in the back of your tank. It's best to just prevent that entirely. We talk about NSA aquascapes, keeping plenty of room for your corals to grow. All of these are great ways not only for your tank to mature, but also to help you with proper flow from the Powerheads you choose.
Absolutely, and one tip for me on that is just to make sure that when you are aquascaping that you're not leaving too much open space. You've got to leave places, especially if you're going to have a fish heavy tank, you got to leave places for them to go and hide if they need to and find refuge.
Great point. And mistake number 4, neglecting your Powerheads, something I'm guilty of. Brian, give some tips on keeping these running right.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's a piece of equipment that you've put in your tank, and even if you are adverse to maintenance, like some people that we know, it's really important. Not keeping these clean can reduce the performance of them, reduce the flow. It can add additional heat to the tank that you don't need by some of that buildup that's getting in there. It can also consume more electricity than you'd like it to. So really taking care of these, it'll help with the longevity of your pump. Keep them clean, keep them maintained, and keep your tank happy. All right, and the 5th mistake on our list, getting a little too creative with those programmable Powerheads.
This is a big one. So most Powerheads on the market now include a controller of one type or another. Things like this with a fancy screen where you can change the mode throughout the day, the flow rate throughout the day. Really, like we just talked about, once you find something that works for your tank, leave it. Stability is key. We've talked about that a bunch. You don't need to reduce the flow rate at night. The ocean doesn't do that. Stability is the key to success.
Absolutely. And as another tip, start low, then you can increase your flow periodically if you see that everything's handling it well or you need to add more. Don't start high, then try to back off. You'll regret that. And just because it's on your phone and it's a nice, cute little app that you can play with doesn't mean you have to.
Number 6, ignoring dead spots. What you're gonna run into is a buildup of excess food, detritus from your fish, and these things are gonna break down, cause nutrient issues, maybe fuel algae that's in the tank already.
Yeah. Absolutely. It can even cause settling of some things or places where, cyanobacteria could start to grow and hang out. It's a little bit of a trial and error issue though, right? So you do want some lower flow portions of your tank. Like I said, for fish, some fish don't like all that flow and they need a refuge to go and hide out in. Maybe you have corals that do need a little less flow or whatever the case may be. So it truly is trial and error. Try to find the perfect place for that pump that you're gonna address as many dead spots as you can. You might have to add a second pump even. But a good way to test, to get an air line, blow a little air right at the back side of the pump, and see where all those bubbles go, and that kind of tells you if there's any place in the tank that's just not getting any flow.
Mistake number 7, not utilizing your Powerheads feed mode. I know I don't like to chase food down. This is really important for slower feeding species and for coral.
Absolutely. High flow can actually blow food right out of a coral's tentacles. It can also prevent some slower moving fish from getting a hold of the food that they need. And in some cases that can result in you overfeeding the tank just to try to make sure that those guys get enough. So turn those pumps down, feed a little, and move on. And mistake number 8 is thinking that more power is better. Now we touched on this just a little bit earlier. Jason, give us some more detail.
Exactly. So I'm going to take you back to our lighting series where we learned that more points of light spread out over your tank is better. I'm going to do that same thought process with Powerheads. Lower flow Powerheads or medium flow Powerheads rather than a couple large ones spread out your tank is going to be the best choice. Mistake number 9, not adjusting your flow periodically. This is gonna sound counterintuitive to what we talked about earlier. Give us some more context.
Yeah, but it is very different. Earlier we talked about adjusting too often and just playing with those controls and that flow. In this case, we're talking about not adjusting it as the tank grows and matures. Your coral's gonna grow, you're gonna get new dead spots, the coral is gonna react differently to it. You may find that that pump that was in a perfect place 6 months ago now needs to be moved. So pay attention to the tank, pay attention to the inhabitants, and make adjustments as needed.
This has been our top Powerhead mistakes. Let us know yours in the comments, and thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time.